ask you a question. Have you ever noticed how two people can go through the exact same situation and have completely different experiences? One person sees an obstacle and shuts down. The other sees an opportunity and rises up. Same event, different outcome. Why? It's not about the external environment, it's about where each person places their focus. See, focus is not just a mental habit, it's a creative force. What you consistently focus on, you begin to feel. What you feel, you act on. And those actions, over time, shape your destiny. That's why I always say energy flows where focus goes. And this isn't just motivation, it's neuroscience and psychology. When you direct your attention to fear, to what's missing, to what might go wrong, your brain triggers a cascade of survival responses. Tight muscles, shallow breathing, narrow thinking. You contract, your potential shrinks, you become reactive instead of creative. But shift your focus even slightly and everything begins to change. Instead of focusing on what you can't control, focus on what you can. Your attitude, your movement, your standards, your goals. And suddenly your physiology shifts, your energy expands, possibility opens up. This is where it gets really interesting. The human nervous system is a pattern recognition machine. Your brain filters millions of bits of data every second, and it can only consciously focus on a small handful. So it deletes, distorts, and generalizes everything else based on your focus. If you're focused on being betrayed, you'll notice every little thing that confirms that story. If you're focused on growth and gratitude, your brain will start to filter the world differently. It will start finding reasons to move forward, not hold back. Now, let's go deeper. Philosophers, from the Stoics to modern thinkers, have echoed the same truth. We don't experience the world as it is. We experience the world as we are. And how we are is shaped moment to moment by what we choose to focus on. Viktor Frankl, a man who survived the Holocaust, said that the last of human freedoms is the ability to choose one's attitude in any given circumstance. That's focus. That's power. That's the ability to reclaim your life from distraction, from fear, from other people's narratives, and bring it back to center. So when I say focus on yourself, I'm not talking about self-absorption, I'm talking about self-leadership, about owning your inner world so you can contribute more fully to the outer one. Because if you can't command your focus will be hijacked by the media, by the culture, by your past. But if you learn to direct it with intention, you become the author of your story, not just a character reacting to someone else's script. Ask yourself, right now, what have I been focusing on today, this week, this year? And is that focus empowering me or draining me? The answer to that question will tell you everything you need to know about the trajectory of your life. Focus is a choice. And that choice, moment to moment, is the first step in transforming your energy, your habits, your results. Choose it wisely. Let's be honest. Most people spend the majority of their lives trying to fix, control, or predict the external world. They're constantly reacting to other people's opinions, chasing outcomes, or worrying about circumstances they can't do a damn thing about. But here's the truth. The external world is never the real problem. The real game is the internal world. Because that's where your interpretations, your emotions, your decisions, and ultimately your destiny are being shaped. Everything starts with your state, and your state is driven by how you manage your mind and emotions, not occasionally, but moment to moment. We've all had days where everything looks good on paper. Job's going fine, relationships are stable, money's in the bank, but inside, there's no peace. There's tension. There's anxiety. And we've also had days where nothing is going right, yet something inside us is calm, centered, powerful. That's not luck. That's not denial. That's mastery of the internal world. You have to understand your nervous system is conditioned by decades of patterns, emotional habits, mental stories, physiological triggers. If you don't learn to recognize and redirect those patterns, they will run you. And if they run you, then life isn't happening for you, it's happening to you. But the moment you start paying attention to what's really happening inside, when you stop blaming and start owning, that's the moment you take your power back. Now let's talk about ownership. This isn't about perfection. It's not about pretending to be positive when you're not. It's about emotional fitness. Just like physical fitness isn't about always being pumped up. It's about consistency, about strength, about recovery. Emotional fitness means you can feel anger without being consumed by it. You can feel fear without letting it paralyze you. You can hold space for uncertainty without needing to control everything around you. That's the foundation of real freedom. And look, there's a reason this is hard. We're not taught to go inward. We're taught to seek validation. We're taught to avoid discomfort. We're taught to believe that if we can just arrange our life in the right way, get the right partner, the right job, the right number in the bank account, then we'll feel peace, confidence, fulfillment. But the formula is backwards. External order doesn't create internal peace. Internal peace creates external clarity. The ancient Stoics said you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. That philosophy is more relevant now than ever because we live in a world that's loud, chaotic, and addicted to reaction. If you want to live a life that's truly yours, not a copy, not a performance, you have to learn to pause, to reflect, to regulate. You have to become the observer of your thoughts, not their victim. That's how you develop presence. That's how you begin to shift your energy from scattered to centered, from fragile to unshakable. So if you want to transform your life, don't start by changing your environment. Start by mastering your inner environment. That's the source. That's the soil where all sustainable change grows from. Because at the end of the day, the world doesn't need a more perfect version of you. It needs a more present, more powerful, more real you. And that only happens when you lead yourself first. Most people think they need to feel better before they can do better. They sit around waiting for inspiration to strike, for motivation to magically appear. But that's not how human beings work. It's not how transformation works. The truth is, action creates emotion. Motion creates emotion. If you want to change the way you feel about your life, your work, your relationships, you don't wait. You move. You change your state first, and your mind will catch up. We've all had moments where we feel stuck, overwhelmed, paralyzed. And what do most people do when they're in that state? They retreat into their heads. They analyze, they scroll, they wait. But the longer you wait in a low energy state, the deeper the spiral gets. You don't think your way out of that spiral, you move your way out. Shift your breath, shift your posture, shift your language. Change the way you use your body, and your entire nervous system starts firing differently. Now, I'm not talking about fake positivity. I'm talking about using the science of state to create a foundation where clarity and courage can enter. Every emotional state you experience, confidence, anxiety, peace, passion, is linked to a specific physiology. You slouch, you breathe shallow, you speak passively, you feel small. You stand tall, breathe deeply, speak with purpose. You feel empowered. If this isn't magic, it's biology, it's pattern, and the good news is it's under your control. There's a deep psychological truth here too. The body doesn't just respond to emotion, it helps create it. In cognitive behavioral therapy, they call this the feedback loop. Your thoughts affect your feelings affect your behaviors, and your behaviors reinforce your thoughts. But that loop isn't a trap, it's a tool. You can interrupt it at any point. You can walk into a room with your shoulders back and your eyes up and literally generate confidence, even if you didn't feel it 5 seconds ago. Do that repeatedly and your nervous system starts to learn a new default. You're not pretending, you're rewiring. And this goes beyond confidence. If you want to feel more grateful, Don't just wait for a perfect moment to be thankful. Get into your body, start moving, and intentionally recall something that made your heart expand. Flood your system with it. Let the energy rise. Your body anchors the experience and reinforces the emotional pattern. Over time, you're not just shifting how you feel, you're conditioning who you are. This is the part people underestimate. Your energy is not fixed. Your emotional home, what you feel on a regular basis, is something you build through repeated patterns. Most people live in emotional homes they didn't choose. Frustration, fear, resignation. But when you change your state consistently, intentionally, you begin to shift that home into something powerful, elevated, resilient. So if you want to transform your energy, stop waiting to feel better. Do something different. Move your body, change your breath, shift your tone, break the pattern. Because the fastest way to break through is to first break the state. Every decision you make, every action you take, every pattern you repeat, it all stems from one core thing, your identity. Not the identity you post about on social media, not the one based on titles, achievements, or roles you play in other people's lives. I'm talking about the deep, unconscious identity, the story you tell yourself about who you are and what's possible for you. That story is either the foundation of your freedom or the cage that keeps you stuck. Human beings have an innate drive to remain consistent with how they define themselves. That's not just a theory, it's psychology. If you believe you're not good with money, you'll subconsciously sabotage financial growth. If you see yourself as just not a confident person, you'll avoid risk, shrink your presence, play small, even when the opportunity is right in front of you. Why? Because the mind resists anything that threatens its core identity, even if that identity is limiting you. Now, most people never consciously choose their identity. It gets shaped by early experiences, repeated feedback, painful moments, or survival patterns. You fail a few times and suddenly you're not capable. Someone criticizes you as a kid and now you're not creative. You get your heart broken and now you're hard to love. But none of these labels are fixed. They're not facts. They're decisions. Decisions that may have served you once but are now silently running your life from the background. Here's the truth. If you want to create lasting transformation, not just a short-term boost, but real cellular level change, you have to shift your identity. You have to interrupt the old narrative and choose a new standard for who you are. And I don't mean some shallow affirmation. I mean rewiring the belief system that governs your thoughts, emotions, and behavior. When you say, I'm done being anxious all the time, and you embody that through new habits, new standards, new rituals, your identity starts to evolve. This is where focus, state, and self-mastery all converge. Because your identity doesn't change by thinking alone. It changes when your physiology, your emotional state, and your focus all line up with the person you're becoming, not the person you've been. You begin to see yourself differently because you start showing up to, and when that shift happens, the world responds in kind. Opportunities open up, relationships deepen, energy expands. Why? Because you're no longer acting from a fractured identity. You're acting from alignment. You don't need to have everything figured out. You just need to stop reinforcing the version of yourself that no longer serves your future. Ask yourself, who do I believe I am when no one is watching? And is that version of me moving my life forward or holding it back? Because the most powerful transformation doesn't happen when you change your circumstances. It happens when you change who you believe you are. Let me tell you, one of the fastest ways to drain your energy, sabotage your potential, and lose yourself completely is to live for other people's approval. It's subtle, it's sneaky, and most of the time, we don't even realize we're doing it. But when your sense of worth is based on how others respond to you, what they think, what they say, whether they validate you, you're giving away your power one piece at a time. And it doesn't matter how smart, talented, or well-intentioned you are. If you're constantly adjusting who you are just to fit into someone else's idea of acceptable, you will never feel free. You'll always be performing, always hustling for permission. And that kind of life is exhausting, not because you're doing too much, but because you're doing it for the wrong reasons. Now, here's what's tricky. We're wired for connection. Human beings need love, need belonging, need community, but there's a difference between being connected and being dependent, between being supported and being defined. When you start shaping your identity around external validation, you lose touch with your own center. You start asking, what will they think? Instead of, what do I know to be true? And when that happens, you don't just lose clarity, you lose integrity. Not the moral kind, but the structural kind, the inner alignment that keeps you whole. This is why I say, focus on the relationship you have with yourself first. Because if that's broken, every other relationship will feel like a negotiation. If you don't trust your own voice, you'll keep outsourcing your value. You'll look for confirmation in likes, in praise, in someone else's attention, none of which lasts. You'll never feel stable because you've built your foundation on something you don't control. But when you start to validate yourself, when you start honoring what you feel, what you value, what you truly need, your energy shifts. You become less reactive, more grounded. You stop chasing approval and start attracting respect. And ironically, it's in that space of self-leadership that your relationships actually deepen, because you're not showing up with a mask anymore. You're not managing perception. You're being real. And people can feel that. Authenticity cuts through noise like nothing else. Doesn't mean you won't care about others. It means you no longer abandon yourself to keep them comfortable. It means you lead with alignment, not attachment. And that shift from validation seeking to self-honoring is where real confidence is born. Not the loud kind, but the quiet, unshakable kind. The kind that doesn't need to prove itself. Ask yourself, where in your life are you still performing? Where are you still shrinking to fit a version of yourself someone else created? And more importantly, what would change if you stopped? Because at the end of the day, living for other people's approval is a prison with invisible walls. Freedom begins the moment you stop asking for permission to be yourself. When people talk about transformation, they usually focus on the breakthrough, the big shift, the lightning bolt, the dramatic moment of clarity. But let me tell you something most people overlook. Real transformation isn't just a spark. It's sustained through ritual, through small daily practices that shape who you become over time. Because at the end of the day, it's not what you occasionally do that changes your life. It's what you consistently commit to, especially when no one's watching. We live in a culture obsessed with outcomes, weight lost, money made, goals achieved. But those outcomes are just the echo of something deeper, your standards, your discipline, your rituals. And rituals aren't just habits. Habits are unconscious. Rituals are intentional. They're sacred commitments to the future version of you. You don't just brush your teeth once and expect lifelong dental health. Same goes for your mind, your emotions, your energy. You train them daily or they atrophy. Now, I'm not talking about rigid routines or perfectionism. This isn't about creating the perfect morning routine and shaming yourself if you miss a day. It's about choosing practices that align with your highest self and anchoring them into your life so they become non-negotiable. Meditation, movement, journaling, reflection, reading, whatever allows you to reconnect with who you are and where you're going. You don't do it to check a box. You do it to calibrate your compass every single day. The reason this matters so much is because life will throw you off course. You'll get triggered, you'll get distracted, you'll hit walls. But if you've cultivated strong rituals, you've built a structure that holds you steady when your emotions try to pull you in 10 different directions. You've built a way back to center. That's power, that's maturity, that's inner leadership. Philosophers and sages throughout history understood this. The Stoics began each day with reflection and ended it with review. Monks chant, warriors train, artists show up to the canvas even when inspiration is nowhere to be found. Why? because they know that mastery doesn't come from waiting until you feel like it. It comes from acting in alignment with your purpose, whether you feel like it or not. And here's the kicker. Your rituals don't just shape your days. They shape your identity. Every time you show up for yourself, you cast a vote for the kind of person you believe you are. You're not just meditating, you're becoming someone who values peace. You're not just writing goals, you're becoming someone who lives with intention. And when those votes stack up, your entire sense of self begins to evolve quietly, powerfully, permanently. So if you want to shift your energy, shift your rituals. Don't wait for inspiration. Design your environment so that inspiration has a place to land. And remember this, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Make sure yours are built to elevate you, not just entertain you. Because transformation isn't a moment, it's a lifestyle, one ritual at a time.